When you get into the New Testament, you turn the page into Matthew, and here comes the Gospels. Matthew gives a pretty detailed account of the nativity story. Only Matthew and Luke give you the real fullness of that Jesus being born story. But Matthew's version includes a lot of the dreams of Joseph and the encounters they have going down into Egypt and all of this. And whenever Matthew kind of turns that corner into the second year of Jesus, Jesus is now living in Nazareth. He's a baby, he's a toddler. We're out of the manger scene, but we're into the toddler scene. And here comes the wise men, what we call the three wise men, even though there's no number of wise men in the Bible. There's 3 gifts by a bunch of wise men, so we don't know how many there are. But here come the wise men, and they're giving gifts into the home of toddler Jesus. And they go to King Herod, and Herod wants to know, where is this boy? All right? And he calls around him all the Old Testament. They wouldn't have called themselves that. They only had one Testament. They didn't look at it like this is the Old Testament. There's a new one coming. But he called all the Old Testament scholars in, and he said, is it true? These guys came from a long way off to bring gifts to a king? I haven't heard of this king. What king are they talking about? Because this is kind of insurrection talk, right? This king talk. He goes, what king are they talking about? And the scribes quote the book of Micah because they know the Old Testament. Remember that uphill climb? He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. They know those scriptures, those little moments in the Old Testament. They go, he's coming and we want to see what he looks like. And so they quote the book of Micah so that they can locate where you could find him, where you could find this child. I want to read from Micah chapter 5. Meet me in verse 2. And I want to read for you a little bit of what the scribes quote in Matthew 2. This is what they tell Herod when they want to find out, where is this king? But you, O Bethlehem of Ephrathah, who are one of the little clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to rule in Israel, whose origin is from of old, from ancient days. Verse 3, therefore he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor has brought forth. Then the rest of his kindred shall return to the people of Israel. And he shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall live secure, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be the one of peace. I'll stop there. That's essentially the text that they quote in Matthew 2. When the wise men say, where is he? We want to meet him. And the scribes say, look at verse 2 of Micah 5, Bethlehem of Ephrathah. There's your Old Testament prophecy of the city of Bethlehem, also known as the city of David. And that's why they run to Bethlehem in order to find this one, Jesus. Micah doesn't mention Jesus. Micah doesn't mention mangers. Micah doesn't mention shepherds and the star and all of the things that happen in the nativity, but he mentions the landing spot. And the scribes saw that as the place where Bethlehem will bring forth the child. So if you've ever wondered why Bethlehem or how did they know it would be Bethlehem, this is just an example. I'm not only reading this so that you'll have an example. We're going to work with this, but this is a spot, okay? This is one of many moments in the Old Testament where you can piece together the prophecies of what he's going to look like. We're going to show you one more before we're done tonight, but if you take the corpus, the body of that Old Testament, and you start to highlight those moments, you end up with the nativity, which is Jesus. So I don't buy the argument that the Bible doesn't talk a lot about the arrival of Jesus. In fact, it's the opposite. The Bible talks constantly about the arrival of Jesus. It was all they were thinking about. It was all they were looking forward to. And then you could say that the New Testament is them just looking back on him and talking about him more and then anticipating his fullness and his arrival in all of us, which leaves me with this thought. We probably should be talking about Jesus. In Christianity, we should probably be focused on Jesus. He's the object of the Old Testament. He's the focus of the Gospels, and he's all the New Testament knows to write about. It's probably what we should focus on. Because in the Jesus story, everything, all of our hopes and dreams are wrapped up. It's God in human flesh. It is showing us who we are. And showing us what we are. Now, you'll notice in verse 2 that it's Bethlehem of Ephrathah. I want to skip that for a moment. It's the most popular thing in that text is Bethlehem. Probably everyone would have got the trivia question correctly. What town was Jesus born in? Churched or non-churched? You've heard, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem." You could have took a shot in the dark and went, okay, there's a song at Christmas called "O Little Town of Bethlehem." I'm just going to take a guess. Probably Bethlehem. Ding, 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 you get it. You don't even have to know Micah 5. You didn't know how much you knew Micah 5. But Bethlehem, boom, Micah 5 too. So I want to skip that for a moment because that's really going to be the body of our work tonight is Bethlehem and Ephrathah. But I'm going to leave it alone because there's some other imagery in this chapter that I really want to bring out about Jesus. Any chance I get to talk about Jesus, I want to pounce on it. I love to bring out the stories about Jesus, to focus your attention on Jesus. Together we see Him. If you're like me, when you see Him, you're impressed. You can't help but be impressed. What we get used to doing is Matthew, Mark, Luke, John stories. Those are great. I love to spend time in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John stories. I also like to realize that the Old Testament stories that anticipated that uphill, we're getting to Jesus. If you can dig into those stories, man, you can get images of Jesus that really get fleshed out in the Gospels, but you can see what they were looking for. You're looking back, okay? There He is. They're looking into a glass darkly, kind of. He's coming. He's going to be something like this. And then we get to see Him in Jesus. And then we get to watch that happen in us. Then we get to watch that happen in our neighbor as he comes through us, makes an appearance. So it's really of good benefit to get the allegory. What I mean by that is, when you read these stories, realize that the prophetic language about Jesus was full of signs and metaphors and allegories. It was trying to get you to think not in literal terms, but in prophetic terms. That's why I said they saw through it darkly. They didn't know exactly what they were seeing. But it's full of imagery